Welcome to the First Steps with Tekla Structures course. In this tutorial, you will learn to launch Tekla Structures and how to open a model. You will learn the basics of the user interface and more about some of its features. The ribbon, file menu, side pane, selection and snap switches. You will also learn how to navigate a model and how to render objects. If you keep following the First Steps course, this is the model you will eventually build. When you open Tekla Structures, the first thing you have to do is to choose your setup. Environment means a set of settings and information specific to a company or region. It defines, for example, which profiles, material grades, default values, and connections you have available. You can load environments from Tekla Structures downloads. Choose the default environment. The role you choose affects the files and settings that are available for you. The user interface is customized for each role. Choose Engineer. Configuration consists of a set of features that the user is entitled to based on the license agreement. Choose Full. If you use a different role and configuration, your Tekla Structures interface may not look exactly the same as what is shown in the tutorial. When you have selected the setup you want to use, the next step is to open a model or to create a new model. You can have one model open at a time. Create a separate model for each Tekla Structures project. By default, each model is stored in its own folder under the Tekla Structures folder. You can choose a template for your model. Model templates allow you to start a model with predefined company templates and settings. This can be especially useful for subcontractors. Pause here to practice what you just learned. This is the user interface of Tekla Structures. At the top, you can find the title bar. The name of the model you are working on will appear here. At the right, you have the Help button and your login status. The Quick Access toolbar contains most often used commands: save, undo, redo, and a button for opening the Undo History dialog. At the top of the screen, you will find the ribbon, which contains a variety of commands that you will use to complete your project. The ribbon has tabs that control which portion of the ribbon is visible. Current visible portion is underlined in blue. Use your mouse to scroll the ribbon content. To change how the tabs are aligned, right-click on the top bar of the ribbon. Select Navigation Mode and then select one of the options. Scroll Visible. Align to left. Or align to tab. You can minimize the ribbon to save space on your screen. You can also rearrange the ribbon according to what you need in your project. Click the eye icon to hide and show parts. You can rearrange the ribbon by dragging parts. This is the File menu, where you can find various controls and settings. The File menu is where you manage your models. Use it to open and save models, print drawings, and to import and export models. It also stores different kinds of catalogs, editors, and logs. From the File menu, you can also find settings, advanced options, as well as project properties. Next to the ribbon is the Quick Launch. It can be used to search for and launch commands. Below the ribbon is the actual workspace. This is where you will work. The active view, which is the view that you are currently working in, is bounded by a yellow box. Window controls allow you to control the windows, also called views, that you have open in the workspace. The side pane is on the right-hand side of the Tekla Structures main window. You can use it to make custom inquiries. Show instructions for the currently active ribbon command. Quickly access Tekla online services. Add point clouds. View and modify properties. Add reference models. And show the applications and components catalog. When you have a drawing open, 2D library is available on the side pane as well. You can have several side pane windows open at the same time, either floating freely or stacked on top of each other. Just right-click a side pane button and select single pane or float. Select stacked panes to show and hide a side pane window. Active side pane windows have blue buttons. At the bottom of the window you have the selecting toolbar. Selection switches are special commands that control which objects and object types you can select. You can control the size of the toolbars by selecting File, Settings. Let's select the largest option for toolbar icons. Click the selection switches on the selecting toolbar to switch them on or off. These four are the main selection switches. They control whether you can select components and assemblies or objects included in them. These switches have the highest priority. Let's zoom in the model and see how the switches affect the selection. Select Components. When you click an object belonging to a component, Tekla Structures selects the component symbol and highlights all component objects. Component objects. You can select objects that have been created automatically by a component. Assemblies and cast units. When you click an object in an assembly or a cast unit, Tekla Structures selects the assembly or cast unit and highlights all objects in the same assembly or cast unit. Objects in assemblies and cast units. You can select assemblies or single objects in assemblies and cast units. In addition to the four main selection switches, there are other switches that control which object types you can select. The Select All arrow turns most switches on. You can select all object types, except for single bolts. For grids, you can have either grids or grid lines on, not both at the same time. Use the tooltips to learn more about the different selection switches. Similar selection switches are available in drawings. Most Tekla Structures commands ask you to pick points to place objects in the model or drawing. This is called snapping. This is the snapping toolbar. You can control the size of the toolbars by selecting File, Settings. Let's make the toolbars the largest they can be. Let's also check that Snap Tooltips is selected. This makes it easier to see which snap is going to be used. These two main snap switches define whether you can snap to reference points or any other points on objects. If both these switches are off, you cannot snap to any positions, even if all the other switches are on. Let's look at some of the snap switches and how they work when picking points in a model. The square one is snap to endpoints. The triangle is snap to midpoints. Be careful when you use the snap to any position snap switch. If you have more than one snap switch active at a time, you can see from the cursor which snap is used. Make sure that you don't have too many snap switches on when snapping. Having too many snap switches on may easily lead to inaccuracies and errors in snapping. The snap symbols have two colors: orange for part or object snap, and green for component snap. To start navigating in a model, you need to have a view open. Go to View tab and click View List. By default, the mouse pointer position determines the center point of zooming. To zoom in, scroll forward with the mouse wheel. To zoom out, scroll backward with the mouse wheel. You can also use menu commands to zoom. Go to View menu and select one of the options. For example, zoom to selected part and back to original again. To pan the model, hold down the middle mouse button and drag the model. You can rotate the model using the Control key and the middle mouse button. The magenta circle is the rotation center point symbol. Tekla Structures rotates the model around this viewpoint. Automatic rotation center is on by default, but if you need to define a different rotation point, just press V and pick a position on the view. The model now rotates around the point you selected. With the basic zooming, panning, and rotating commands, you can get a thorough overview of the project quickly. Rendering modes are very useful to highlight certain parts of the model. You can find all the rendering options on the View tab. Under Rendering, we recommend you learn the keyboard shortcuts for the rendering modes. The keyboard shortcuts are Ctrl plus number for parts and Shift plus number for components. Like this. Ctrl plus 1 for parts wireframe. Object outlines are displayed, surfaces are not. Objects are transparent. Ctrl plus 2 for parts shaded wireframe. Object outlines are displayed. Objects are transparent, and their surfaces are rendered. Ctrl plus 3 for parts grayscale. Objects are shown in grayscale. Ctrl plus 4 for parts rendered. Object surfaces are displayed. Objects are not transparent. Ctrl plus 5 for show only selected part. The objects you have selected are displayed. The other objects are almost completely transparent. And the corresponding shortcuts for components. Shift plus 1. Shift plus 2. Shift plus 3. Shift plus 4. And Shift plus 5. There are many keyboard shortcuts that make modeling with Tekla Structures more efficient. Here are some of the most common ones that will be used in this course. You can find these and more from Tekla User Assistants. You have now reached the end of this tutorial. In this tutorial, you learned how to launch Tekla Structures, how to open a model, and how to navigate in a model. You also learned about the different parts of the user interface, the ribbon, file menu, selection and snap switches, and the side pane. You also learned about the different rendering modes. You can find out more about the user interface from Tekla User Assistants. You can now close this tutorial and proceed to the next.